Are we live, Mansi?
Ma'am, just one more minute.
Okay, tell me when we are live. Yeah, we are live. Rupali Tanna is always the first one to log in. Hats off to her. And we have Pooja, Geeta. So we're going to give a few minutes for everybody to join in, and then we shall begin the session. Good evening, everybody. We are just waiting for one more minute for everybody to join in, and then we will start our session for the day. So I think we are ready to start now. Namaskar and a very good evening to all of you. I'm Dr. Swati Popat-Watts, the President of Early Childhood Association and Association of Primary Education and Research. It is indeed a landmark moment for this country when the NEP was launched in 2020, the new education policy. After 34 years, we got a policy that is absolutely forward-thinking. It talks about play, it talks about experiential learning, and most importantly, it talks about early childhood education, the foundational years. Today, we are going here to discuss NIPUN. NIPUN is a document that has been released by the MOE. It is for the foundational literacy and numeracy in the foundational years, because as if you've read the NEP, it lays a strong emphasis on foundational literacy and numeracy. How we teach literacy and numeracy in the early years will define how our children learn to read, write, and enjoy learning. So without taking too much time, let me introduce the panelists and speakers for today. We have Dr. Rita Sonawat. She is the founder, executive director of Early Childhood Association and Association for Primary Education and Research. She's a very well respected educator in the field. She has been known for her stand on so many issues. And Dr. Sonawat and I only agree on education. Otherwise, we disagree on most things. And that's what we love about each other. Let me now introduce Mrs. Farzana Dohadwala. She is the Vice President of Early Childhood Association and Association for Primary Education and Research. Farzana ma'am is always known as IB, because when IB actually started in India, she was the face, she was the leader of IB curriculum. And I met her during that time. And ever since that, I've always been in awe of her leadership skills and the complete clarity with which she speaks. So welcome, ma'am. Our third speaker and panelist for today is Fatima Agarkar. She needs no introduction. She is the Vice President of the Early Childhood Association, and she's leading the brigade in Mumbai for the Association for Primary Education and Research. Fatima is somebody who is approachable, knowledgeable, and somebody that influences both parents, teachers, and educators. You know, it's really remarkable to have a person like that who has an influence on all three stakeholders. So welcome, Fatima. It's a pleasure to have the three of you here. Our format for today is Each of the panelists and speakers are going to talk to you about Nipun, share the details about Nipun, and then we are going to have some questions asked by panelists to each other. And then we are going to throw open the floor for questions from participants. So while you are listening to the session, if you have questions coming out to the top of your head, just note it down, or you can type it in, and Mansi will make a note of that, and we will take those questions at the end of the session. So let's begin with Dr. Rita Sonawat. Ma'am, please share with us your thoughts about Nipun.
Okay, thank you so much, Swati, for your kind introduction. Because in your introduction, you need to say that we don't agree to disagree. So that's always very interesting.
Ma'am, log gossip karte hain, so let us give them some fodder to gossip, no?
Okay, first class. Absolutely agree. So this document has come from Department of School Education and Literacy, that is in the Ministry of Education. So me and Swati are harping for many times that we are very happy that this new education policy has brought early childhood education into the mainstream of education. And we have conducted many seminars and webinars related to new education policy. And all of you must be knowing in education policy, it is said very clearly that this literacy and numeracy should be worked as a mission. So whole country is involved. Each and every person of the country is involved to give literacy and numeracy to all the children. So when I am giving a lot of emphasis to all the children. So for that, National Initiative for Proficiency in Reading with Understanding and Numeracy has developed. So NIPUN is the short form, N is a national initiative. So you see, it's a national initiative. It's not a state. It's not ECA initiative. It's a national initiative for proficiency in reading. So if you have seen our document Parikrama, we have very clearly written one chapter on reading readiness and writing readiness. And another chapter is on mathematical readiness. If you see those chapters, then you will be seeing those chapters we have conceived long back. And till now, if you would have followed those chapters, we did not really need Nipun today. That is what is my strong statement from ECA. So this is for proficiency reading with understanding and numeracy. So we all know third standard, fourth standard, children, they read, but they don't understand what they are reading. So this is ESER report is coming, national surveys are coming, as well as our researchers are going this direction, that children, they read, but they don't understand. They are reading history, they are reading geography, but they don't understand what they are reading. So that is one thing which we have to really take care. And in this Nipun, it's a really, I can say, I'm very critical many ways. But for Nipun also, I'm very critical because this document has so much repetition. If you see the first part and the second part and the third part, it's as if three different people, three different groups have written and then they combine, and nobody had time to read the whole thing because so many things are repetition in the 332 pages document, and I read 4 to 5 times the whole document, and I've seen, I marked also the repetition, and I talked to NCRT director and I told them these are the pages in which these things, and sometimes the whole sentence to sentence repetition. So this kind of thing, if coming from a national body, so ECA is definitely keeping eye, and we are very much, I can serious about when the document comes from the government of India, because it affects the whole country. So it has given an exhaustive glossary that is there, and acknowledgement is written by Pukhriyal. So we know that before he left, this the last document has come from him, from his table. The part 1 is written by NCERT. So director and professor are involved. Their names are there in the acknowledgement. So part A is written by NCERT and part 2 is written by the Ministry of Education, Secretary, School Education and Literacy. So that is the administrative part. So that's okay if they have written. We don't have any problem. But if you see, part A has 8 chapters and part 9 has 9 chapters. So 332 pages you have to read to understand. So they start why it is, why you need literacy and numeracy. Do you think after 70 years of independence, we need to know why we need literacy and numeracy? So that is where I was like shocked, but that's okay. Here, what is our commitment as a Indian citizen? Our commitment is by 2026, 27, the children, those who are in the primary school, till that they should be thorough. They should be absolutely thorough with the literacy and numeracy. So what they are reading, what they are writing, they should understand their reading and writing. And mathematics also, the foundation should be very clear. There are many times, you must have heard from Swati in a national seminar also, she said, and very clearly she has mentioned that readiness has gone, the time of readiness has gone, but nobody understood what Swati is saying. Because when we always say before the document come, and now the document is also saying the readiness has gone. Why it has gone, we need to understand that also, because biologically we are ready, then only we start reading and writing. Biologically, when we are reading, then only we start writing. So we always used to give a lot of emphasis on a finer muscle, train muscle, this muscle, so much we have talked about. Now it is saying it's a foundation of literacy and numeracy. So give practice, work different ways, 101 ways this document is written by which one can do literacy and numeracy. So this document is definitely giving us understanding that the implementation of this is a very serious business, because in this document, the implementation, the whole country is involved. Nation level, state level, district level, block level, and the chart is also made, flow chart is made, who is responsible. But there is only private sector school name is there and some voluntary organization. That's all. Everything is controlled by the government of implementation. All level, and 5th level is the school level. So school management council is also responsible, management committee is also responsible to see the literacy and numeracy is taking place or not. So like this, the implementation part is quite serious, I can say, and it is very much thoughtful that unless everybody is involved, one cannot even reach to giving the literacy and numeracy. So if you see part 1, which is written by NCERT, is quite a good description, I can say, very nice description. But again, there is again the repetition always kills us, because when and then second thing is there is nothing new, nothing different, things which are there, which we are doing for a long time. The same thing is written. So we were expecting something different, something good, something which has come from government. So, but I don't think so. That is another thing where I was disheartened. So I think so. I'll stop here, because she'll give you definitely another chance, because I want to speak some more on this issue. So thank you, Swati. Swati has given me 10 minutes to speak, but I finished Swati in 8 minutes. Thank you.
Ma'am, we will give you those 2 minutes back again during the question answer session. Can I request Mansi to please put the PowerPoint on now? I'm quickly going to take you through the document and what are the aspects of the document that schools should be focusing on. I, for one, was very happy to see this document, because for a very long time, schools in India, we have private schools, we have government schools. Government schools were struggling with how to teach literacy and numeracy, and so were some section of the private schools. They would think that literacy is about teaching children to write. Early as 3 years, children would be forced to write. Numbers, they were not understanding what's a numeral, what is counting, etc. So from that point of view, I'm very happy with this document. I also like the nice acronyms that the government is coming out with these days, like Sarthak and Nipun and Diksha, etc. Let's go to the next slide. The chapters that interest me the most are these chapters, but I did not like chapter 8, which stands for school readiness, because I don't think this term is suitable for early childhood education. I hate it when people talk about school readiness. It completely reduces us to preparing children for school, So apart from that, the 7 chapters, if you see, are taking a teacher and a school who doesn't know what is curriculum, what is literacy, and what is numeracy into a nice graded format of understanding it. Let's go to the next slide. Very importantly, I know the members of ECA are schools that plan their own curriculum. I would urge you all to look for in your curriculum these 3 developmental goals. Children maintain good health and well-being, because post-COVID, this is going to become and should become one of our first areas of focus. Children become effective communicators. You cannot do literacy and numeracy till children don't know how to communicate and involved learners and connect with their immediate environment. Your curriculum needs to focus on 3 developmental goals, because you need to focus on health and well-being. Then you need to focus on children becoming communicators. Only then will they become involved learners and connect with their environment. Let's go to the next slide. The SDG goals, everybody knows about them, but here they have mentioned again target 4.1, 4.2, and 4.5. I love this about the gender equality that we are talking about, that every time they stress on ensuring that girls and boys have access. Now, in private schools, we may be very aware of it, but in many Anganwadis and Balwadis, parents and sometimes even teachers are not very much aware about gender equality. Let's go to the next slide. The foundation for language and literacy they have given is these are the areas where, and these are the stages. Because when I visit schools, when ECA does school quality audits, and we look at the literacy program of many schools, we find that their curriculum goes completely haywire and goes everywhere and anywhere instead of following a flow. Because reading and literacy has steps, and you need to follow those steps before taking the child to the next level. Let's go to the next slide. In numeracy also, they have outlined the steps, that what are the steps that you should be going to when you are framing your own curriculum. Next slide, please. I love their assessment track. They have divided the foundational stage into 6 different stages, which is your nursery, junior, senior, first, second, third, etc. Most importantly, they talk about purposive assessment. I like the word purposive assessment. And it's about tracking the child's progress and not about knowing how much children know. So I like these 3 points about assessment, which is identify the child's strength, needs, interest, and preferences, potentiate child's performance, and scaffold it through interventions. I was so happy to see the word scaffold coming into this document, and collaborate to solve issues and areas of concerns. These are the 3 things, if schools keep in mind where assessment is concerned, it will go a long way in reducing the stress in children and in parents, because sometimes when we call parents for open houses, we only tell them the faults in their child. But if you see the last point, it talks about collaborate to solve issues and areas of concerns. Let's go to the next slide. When we talk about what is our curriculum about, we talk about physical skills, social skills, emotional skills, cognitive skills, etc. I like this list which they have given. It talks about sensory and perceptual development, physical health and motor development, language development, cognitive development, and let's go to the next slide. Development of creative and aesthetic appreciation, and personal, social, and emotional development. This gives you a great grid on which to plan your activities, both virtual and physical. Because even in virtual learning, I have noticed that we are not covering all the aspects of a child's development. And that's why parents are not very much hooked on to virtual learning, because I think schools are focusing more on academics only. So if you look at your curriculum, because the whole aim of this session today is to understand NIPUN, and to look at your own curriculum to see whether you are meeting the standards that have been defined. Let's go to the next slide. Very importantly, this paragraph which is there after this is something that I feel schools should read, because it talks about not looking at a domain in isolation. You cannot, where I always tell that if you're taking a virtual session, what have you done for socio-emotional development? What have you done for physical? What have you done for literacy? What have you done for numeracy? You can't have a virtual session where only literacy is being done or only numeracy is being done. Even when you are doing literacy, in literacy, you have to look at creative, aesthetic, personal, social, emotional, etc. So I like the way this has been formulated. Let's go to the next one. It talks about the three things that I have already spoken about. Look for these steps in your curriculum, that before we go to actually teaching children reading and writing and number work, have we looked at goal 1, goal 2 before we go to goal 3? Let's go to the next one. I like this point, which is 5.1.4, which is methodology to adopt age and developmentally appropriate pedagogical practices. I think this is the lacuna in Indian schools, both private and government. We are not age and developmentally appropriate. So I think if teachers, especially in teacher training colleges also, are taught about these aspects, we will have better quality teachers. And I think parents also need to be educated about this. Let's go to the next one. The work that they are still doing, the MOE is still working on, is a kind of a codification of the assessment goals. And they've given a description of how they are going to codify them. I would urge schools to create their own codification of how a particular activity that they are doing in the class, how does it link to a child's development, age, etc., and in which area of development. Let's go to the next slide. This is what they talk about, codification of learning outcomes. I was glad to see the word learning outcomes, because, we talk about grades and marks and report cards. It is very, very important that schools should now understand that before planning their curriculum, their learning outcomes need to be in place. And it is on these learning outcomes that you will then focus on what the children have learned and how much they have progressed. Let's go to the next slide. I like these checklists also that they have given, that what are the teacher preparation checklist. Then if you see in the next slide, this is what I loved about the assessment bit. The level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. You know what? We always give a tick mark or a cross mark when we are assessing children. In the assessment section of this manual, I love that they have given, like we use the ECA-APER, and in the ECA-APER, there are 3 parameters called developing, emerging, and secure. I love this, that at level 1, I'm trying to achieve the learning outcome with teachers' support. In level 2, I'm achieving the learning outcome with teachers' support in the given time frame. In level 3, I have achieved the learning outcome on my own. And in level 4, I'm achieving the learning outcome and helping others and managing challenging tasks. So it actually gives you an idea where the child is in the learning continuum. That, we cannot put a cross on a child's activity. We must say whether the child is doing it with support, is doing it without support, is doing it on its own, it's taking the initiative. Where is the child? So I love this bit about the assessment. Next slide, please. Nishtha is something that is a website of the NCERT. Nishtha is for teacher training. And I would urge all of you who are running your own teacher training programs to look at the website called Nishtha and see whether the topics that are covered in your course also. Early Childhood Association has also come out with a booklet on what is a quality teacher training program, you should get your hands on that booklet also. Next slide, please. And then, of course, you have about classroom. Next slide. And they have about assessments. And next slide. And they also give you what should be outside the classroom. So which means home-based, what are the activities that you can do? Yes, definitely the manual is much more based on government schools, because naturally 80% of our schools are government schools, and private schools usually are not mentioned in our government documents, which is a sad thing, which has been pointed out by Dr. Sonawat. But I think we should take the best from this document and at least try to work out on our present quality and levels. Next slide, please. Parent engagement also has been identified here, because parent engagement is something that, we have this keep off policies for parents in many schools. So how they can engage with the school, how can they do home learning, etc. Next slide, please. I would like to leave you with this slide, which is the words that are covered. Next one, please. Look in your curriculum for all these, because these are the words that have been covered in the document. And this is, if you have something from any of these words, it means you have a quality curriculum. So I fully agree with Dr. Sonawat that the document could have been better, but I feel something is better than nothing. Being a Frobel fan, I always say, and I follow in his philosophy, that critiquing will get us nowhere. Focusing on the rights and taking it forward is going to get us everywhere. And that has been the ECA philosophy. I'm so glad Dr. Sonawat talked about Parikrama, because Parikrama, as she rightly said, had the government only looked at Parikrama, they wouldn't have had to make any manuals, because Parikrama is such a rich manual. So I leave you with this. This was my presentation on Nipun. I just wanted to highlight to you what the whole document and manual is about, and interest you in going through the same. I now call on Dr. Farzana ma'am. Ma'am, over to you, and please share with us what you think about Nipun.
Good evening to everybody. And as Dr. Rita and Swati ma'am have spoken about the pros and cons of the document, I thought at my end, let me use the document as a compass and give you examples of how what they are saying can be done in our schools. Because rural schools are still struggling. It's the urban private schools that are doing well. So whatever good we see in the world today, yeah, it's always because there is an educative mind behind it. Parikrama was made because of these educative minds that we have in our Indian vertical. So education is not just about inspiring people and students, but it's also getting them to think out of the box and see or foresee a better future. And this is exactly what I feel is what Nipun is giving us a direction. It's all about how to apply in real life the change for a better tomorrow. We've got philosophers and people from Chanakya to Albert Einstein to Swami Sivananda. They've all said, what is the role of education in our society? So for me, I look at Nipun as a compass. I am an educator, and it is showing the right path, at least which all educators must minimum we need to do. So for me, that is very important, and that is what I would urge all of you to look at it with those lenses, right? So foundation learning, that's basically what Nipun is all about, is the basis of all future learning for a child. What he will learn in his foundation years is like building the foundation for the structure up. And as we all know, and Dr. Swati is a master in that, brain development happens mostly in the early years, a little bit into the primary years, but this is that stage of foundation where we need to nurture our children's development. So one of the aims of NIPUN is capacity building. You know, most of us have classrooms. You and I have all studied in classrooms which are very teacher directed. What NIPUN is saying is change. Now we need student driven classrooms. And why not even in the primary years? We would feel, oh, is it possible? Yes, it's very much possible, friends, to have student driven classrooms so that whatever we teach a concept is connected to a real life problem and a real life situation. It's not only a concept, I talk about it, and like if I'm teaching water and we need to save water, but I'm not doing any real life work or experiential learning with my children. So let me take some examples from numeracy. For example, when we teach measurement, the way you and I have learned is we have learned by rote, we've learned numbers, ordinal, cardinal, nominal numbers, we've learned the works. But what NIPUN is saying, yes, numeracy is important, but how will you create the foundation from even in the primary years? And that is by teaching them estimation skills, which are so important. If today you were to ask me, estimate the length and breadth of my dining table, I will say, wait, let me get a measuring tape and let me measure, and then I will be able to say. Another aspect is also using non-standard units of measurements like hand span, foot span. So it is showing us a compass of what we need to do. We may be doing it, excellent. If not, it's like a rethink of what we can. One other very important point is the multilingual classrooms. You know, we in English medium schools, in our urban cities, we're all about English, English, English. But most of the children who come to our school, and I was very proud when I went and visited Dr. Swati's one center, and she insists on what I'm talking about, that the teacher has to know or understand at least the basic mother tongue which the children in her class are speaking. This helps because the child wants to express. He understands, but he doesn't have the vocabulary. So if he's allowed, and if it's a multilingual class, which NIPUN is also suggesting, NEP is also suggesting, it will help us to understand whether our child has conceptually understood what we are trying to teach. Another great thing which they are talking about is experiential learning. For example, why is play not allowed in primary school? This is something which Dr. Swati and I always are talking about. Why play is sort of, it's something of early years. As soon as you come in primary, it's out. Please, friends, let's give them teach, but through play. Movable angles, fraction blocks, unit cubes. Teach them maths, but teach them through play. They are working with these manipulatives, and surely they will be able to understand, because this active experience, friends, helps them to understand a very complex mathematical concept. Another important thing is transdisciplinary learning. You know, we are always putting our subjects in compartments, and we're never trying to look at lens of maths in science or English in maths. And that's where I think this NIPUN is telling us to also look at. And this is something which international education is always talking about. And this is something now I'll be proud that we'll be able to do in even our rural simple schools. You know, for example, if I'm teaching art, why can't I use my shapes that I've been talking about in maths? So that's transdisciplinary learning, which is, it's a natural fit. There is no put on, there's nothing which is play. Now, for example, even if when they are playing with anything, for example, I'm playing physical school where there is no COVID, we are playing, they can also learn maths. What is the size of a football field? What is the size, what is the distance between the stumps and the crease? Now let's talk about number operations. Oh, I love this. You know, what we usually do, and which NIPUN is also talking about, is bring a picture, like when we do picture composition and we show a picture of maybe 6 cars. I talk about cars because my grandchild loves cars. And then we can start talking. There are 6 cars, so 6 is a cardinal number. First car is the number is a racing car 99. And in that way, we can talk about the cardinal order. So let's not give them bookish knowledge. Let's link it to some interesting thing which will stay with the child and the child will always remember. And that's what foundation numeracy is all about. Now, if you're talking about reading and literacy, there are patterns. There is pattern in day and night. So when we're talking patterns in maths, let's link it to everything. Children, do you see pattern in day and night? Do you see a pattern in seasons? There is so much pattern in nature. There's pattern in the ripples of a water pond. There's pattern in spellings. So let's link that there is pattern everywhere around us. We just need to look at it and we need to understand it, and it will help us to develop. So if I know a pattern in maths, it's going to help me to do problem solving, mental maths, everything. As John Maxwell has very well said, successful and unsuccessful people do not vary greatly in their abilities. They vary in their desire to reach their potential. We need to get our children to reach their potential. The last few points, one is importance of the role of a teacher, which Dr. Swati also talked about. I want the teacher to be a facilitator and rather than a didactic teacher. The way I have studied, my teacher used to talk, I used to listen. But now talk time, student voice, student choice, these are the important things now. Research is happening in these areas. So give our children that talk time and encourage them to do more. Parents have a very key role to play because there is this curiosity in a child. But what happens at school, at home, we sort of close this curiosity. If they ask a question, don't ask me, go ask your papa, go ask your grandfather. They are never there for the children. What else can they do? Foundation, numeracy and literacy, not only the job of the teacher, especially now in an online vertical, when they are cooking, baking, shopping, even when they're traveling, what is the distance we are traveling, and even when they are playing. So such things a parent can also help us. And I think as schools, we need to share this through a newsletter that in these activities, we would like your help. And I'm sure parents would come out. There are rap songs, there is music, there is rhythm. Let's bring fun into our learning. Let's not it be boring academics. And I would like to leave you all with this thought of our President APJ Abdul Kalam. Creativity is the key to success in the future. And primary education is where teachers can bring creativity in children at that level. So over to you, Dr. Swati. Thank you so much.
It's so enriching to hear both your views. Dr. Sonawat talked about comprehensive, you talked about compass, and you said we must involve singing, etc. So I'm going to go over to Fatima. It's your turn now. It's your turn now, Fatima. Are you ready? Are you ready? Tell us more about Nipun.
Thank you, Dr. Swati, and that's beautiful. And coming from a sportsman's wife, I always bat for co-curricular. So if that is the introduction and that's the lead-in that I have, I'm loving it. Next time, I'll pass a ball back to you and we can respond in the language that we love the most. For you, it's music. For me, it's sport. And I think for me, Nipun represents, like Farzana ma'am beautifully talked about, the future. By 2026, it's definitive now, it's decisive. We do have a document, Dr. Rita Sonawat, I think it's important. We're taking it forward now to the primary years, which kind of always is that in-between step, because the focus is either higher education, it's either grade 9 and 10, because, those are board exams. These bitaras, primary up to grade 1 to 8, are in no man's land, never land. And it's scary. Without direction, I worry. And yes, there's been a lot of research that may have come through good progressive private schools, international schools. You can see the effort put in, repetitive as it may be. But the fact is the good aspects have come in. And the fact is the good work being done in preschools, which is not the end goal of getting into a high school, is now being continued because we are viewing it as a whole. NEP told us foundational years goes up to grade 3. It now becomes important to understand that grade 1, 2, 3 are even more crucial for survival. I call it the precautions that COVID has taught us. Please don't go out without wearing masks. Please don't cough in public spaces. You know the techniques. Please wash your hands. It is now telling us this. 1, 2, if it is lost to knowledge, if it is lost simply to facts, because we love this in India. Parents love performance. I mean, I don't know whether we're a competitive country and we're born genetically with this, but mar ke karna hai. And that is scary, because what that does is, by loading information, like Farzana ma'am beautifully gave examples on numeracy. If that foundation can involve music, art, drama, sport, IT, which is the emphasis in Nipun, beautifully, I mean, please, ladies and gentlemen listening, there are a number of checklists. If now Swati ma'am goes into a school and audits them without any of those words and any of those checklists being done, it'll be a sad state of affairs, because here's a document that is repeating information to guide you. It's giving you the structure. It's giving you teacher training. Please look at Nishtha. It's a beautiful site. There's Diksha that has all these digital resources. Even if you are doing this out of passion and you don't have the requisite teacher training qualifications, this is your hand that's holding you. For me, Nipun represents hand holding. For me, it's also talking directly to parents and telling parents, doctor banega, lawyer banega, sportsman banega. They won't speak. They won't learn to think. They won't be auditing their accounts. Foundational literacy and numeracy tells us we don't need to specialize in everything before we first learn to communicate, before we are first healthy, developmental goals, and lastly, we are part of the environment that Farzana ma'am spoke about. So this is the foundation. Now, step by step, they've repeated everything. They've broken it down. I do like the first section, but I do like the administrative aspect, like Swati ma'am mentioned. I play both parts, school management, teachers, and parents. And I feel that somewhere responsibility, I mean, they've beautifully summed it up. It takes a village to raise a child, and we've heard it. Now deliver on it. Implementation. You want the future? By 2026, if you want us to not make the mistakes that we already have, we shouldn't have had a document, I agree. We should have known these things. But thankfully, it's here. It's spelling it out. It's very structured. It's telling us we need to follow steps which have been checklisted. It also talks about technology. And I'm so glad it does, because we associate technology with these online exams or offline exams when it's 9th and 10th. We're forgetting technology is not screen time. So early years that, beautifully talks about active engagement is now building that block in grade 1, 2, 3. Too many statistics out. We as a country don't compete, yet we claim that we have the best entrance test results. Sorry, there's a parallel industry for that. Nipun is telling us, you want to do this, and there is that beauty with assessments. I agree with you, Swati ma'am. I share your passion. It's very clear. It's learning outcomes. It will help if you let the child know what the child doesn't know, because children don't know everything. So am I aiding you? Am I guiding you? Now you're independent. Now you're helping. Beautiful. But what it's also telling me, Nipun has stand out and said, national assessment system will come into place. Our baseline exams in primary education were meant for rural schools and unaided schools where they had limited resources. Unfortunately, these tests were being taken by private schools in primary years. So the scores are always going to be different because these children have that base. And the national assessment system is saying one child for all. But we are going to look at those scores and the school scores. So it's going to be a school assessment system and a national assessment system. And I think that means we're going to move forward together. This divide, Swati ma'am, I never understood. I mean, government schools, private schools, every child is someone's whole world. Every child, whether he's born in, on the road or in my house or in an affluent family, every child is important, but we weren't supportive. I think Nipun strongly represents the fact that it's going to have to be government directed. And it's very important, Swati ma'am. Nothing in my mind works unless it's top down. Too often, we lose focus. So they're saying it's top down. States will get involved, but listen, we're going to control it as the Ministry of Education. I don't want to get into the legalities of regulatory bodies, but I'm hoping it's done with a clear structure to say we're putting steps in place. So again, it is giving everybody a benchmark. For me, NIPUN is a benchmark. It's enabling everyone to come together. My only reservation was I would like to have seen more of sport integration. It's coming. I mean, they're talking about STEAM and STEM education, and they're trying to bring it all together. But I think when our Honorable Prime Minister talks about, putting more than 126 athletes that have gone to the Olympics, we're 1.3 billion. Swati ma'am, you always correct me for this figure, so I'm checking with you once again. We need to create more sportsmen. Sportsmen, musicians, singers are all created at the early childhood, continuing through primary. They just don't materialize and specialize at 9th and 10th. So build that foundation. And this foundational literacy and numeracy policy is saying that even if you're a singer, you still need to express yourself. Lots of takeaways. Unfortunately, I agree with Farzana ma'am, 7 minutes doesn't do justice to this beautiful document. A lot of effort gone in. Clearly, it's work in progress. There could be recommendations, and I know ECA, and I'm very proud to be a part of APER that represents primary research, that's representing us taking this story forward. We'll keep recommending and keep knocking on the door. It's a document that needs contribution from every stakeholder. 300 pages, how many educators are going to read it? That's the question we have to ask, because it overwhelms you. So maybe the repetition was to make sure you're reminded of the vision. Lots of takeaways. Please look at it. And if you are able to, like Swati ma'am pointed out, even do 10% of the words that she had put up in that Wordle, I think you're off to a good start. You have level 2, 3, and 4 to reach, and that should be the goal through this document. Thank you, ma'am.
Superb. I loved that the talk today started with Dr. Sonawat saying national initiative. It was very importantly, she pointed out that it is not for a state, not for a school. For the first time, it's going to be a national initiative. And I love the way Farzana ma'am said compass. It's showing you the way. You may go, you may carry your different ideas, etc., but it's showing you the way. And I love that Fatima focused on sports, that even though the document does not talk about sports, we must include sports, and we must ensure that we read the entire document, because that's very, very important. I fully agree with her. I think people will read parts of the document and sometimes not be able to put together the entire details. Now, it's over to Dr. Sonawat. Dr. Sonawat, it's your chance to ask questions to any of the panelists.
Okay, I'll ask a question to Fatima. Fatima, you said this is a beautiful document. Can you tell me 3 things from the document which you like the most?
I've already mentioned one of them is the learning.
Whatever you have mentioned apart from that.
Okay, I do like the fact that clearly there's a technology integration. I also like the fact that they're saying that every child needs to be supported. So finally, at grade 8, the schools that are reserving the right to detain the children from taking 9th and 10th board exams will now rethink, because assessments are going to be supported. It's very clearly mentioned, I can't verbatim remember the line, that even if a child fails, the reason for failing must be listed and you must support the child. Now, if at this level you're going to do it at grade 1, 2, 3, you've built a strong foundation. And the language used, which is literacy, which is multilingual, again, very critical, because we assume English is the language that has to be spoken. Very emphatically, they've spoken about multilingual classrooms. And the thing that I do like is that everyone has to come together, and a little pressure on the parents to say that it isn't exhaustive information that will give your child the foundation. It is going to be a scaffolding. It is going to be a graded progress. It is going to be progress that will also be aided by different organizations. And now it's all available. So you're coming together as a group to support, because not every school will have all capabilities. Some do, some need help. I like that.
Okay. Rita ma'am, would you like to ask anybody else?
Okay, I will like to ask Swati you a question. This document has come. So what do you think, what is the role of ECA? One is we have this webinar. Apart from that, what is the role of ECA to help the government to implement this document?
I think what ECA does best, ma'am, is always our publications. Because we may not know it, but our publications reach to schools. I know of so many of our member schools who use it. I think it's time for our publications now to reach the government. So I have an offer for you, Dr. Sonawat. Fatima and I are already writing a book on numeracy. So I would like to announce it to the listeners that very soon we will be launching it, and we are happy that Nipun has come so that we know that we are following the format of Nipun in our book. But I would like to tell Dr. Sonawat, because I have been a huge fan, ma'am, of your whole language approach. Years back when the country was going called gaga over phonics, it was Dr. Sonawat who was taking workshops on whole language approach. And still many schools don't know about whole language approach, and it is mentioned in Nipun. So ma'am, Dr. Sonawat, would you and Farzana ma'am like to come out with the book on literacy, foundational literacy?
That's
It's
all
a
right.
huge task.
Yeah, okay. So you thought book is a answer. Writing book is an answer. That is what you meant.
Maybe you know what, in our book, if we are not only going to repeat what is already given in Nipun, maybe we can also mention a few best practices that schools are doing or we are suggesting. So it becomes a tool then for the government that this is something that has worked. You can use this.
Because when I read this Nipun, so they, being a government, they always take a balance side. So they have talked about phonetics, then they talk about whole language approach. Then they said best is to balance between the two. But how to do balance, that they are not talking about.
That is what your book will do. That is where you will come in, ma'am. So I'm taking it as a yes. And so we are announcing another book today. Dr. Sonawat and Farzana ma'am are going to come out with the foundational literacy and teach you how to have balance in your literacy program. Now over to you, Farzana ma'am. Whom would you like to ask a question to?
My question would come to you, Dr. Swati, because this is something which is very close to your heart, which Nipun also keeps talking about, is play. So why is play essential in primary years for this overall development? You know, you gave us those development goals. So why is play essential?
So, I'm so glad that you asked it, because as Fatima also said, by the time the child comes in primary, we just give up on play. We think play is not required. Play is called the engine of learning. So if you're going to take away the engine, how is the train going to move forward? We somewhere put children into primary classrooms and we stop singing to them, we stop telling stories to them, we stop playing with them. And that's where their sense of curiosity, their sense of exploration completely goes away. And they start accepting what we are telling them, that, oh, this is how estimation has to be done. Okay. They don't think of diverse ideas. If you read the book that Dr. Sonawat and I have co-authored on metacognition, it is very, very important to understand that play makes children think about thinking. That if this idea of mine is not working, then what can I do better? How can I work on it? So play is not just about, senseless play and bas play karne do. In play, children think. It is very important to go through Piaget's schemas. Are we giving those schemas in the primary classroom? Because if we are not, then we are laying the foundation of boring educational practices. It starts from primary, and then by the time it reaches secondary, we just have robots who are just thinking, sitting there and not being able to understand, and they fall into the trap of rote learning. So play is required in primary because it is the engine. How can you take away the engine just because the child has gone to the primary?
Lovely, lovely. Thank you. I know you're so passionate about it, so I wanted to ask you this question, you know. So my next question would be to Fatima.
So now,
anyone can respond.
no, I think Fatima should respond.
Teacher training is a must if we want to make Nipun successful. Can you elaborate? Of course, they have put in their practices, but do you think schools, private schools should be doing also not the B.Ed that an entry point? They need to do much beyond as an online, as an ongoing, you know, teacher training.
Very important point, Farzana ma'am, because I think Nipun also emphasizes this repeatedly about the quality of teacher education and then the in-service training. So they have then come up with these committees and, you know, cluster organizations using different acronyms. Nishtha is one of them, so is Diksha. Now, both these are going to be very important, including the SERT and the NCRT manuals, because now it's all coming together. Now, what it is also telling you is when you look at teacher checklists, okay, you've done your B.Ed, you've done your ECA-APER, and now you're in a class. Nobody taught you how to actually be in the class doing any of those, right? You're confused, you have 30 kids in a class and people are reacting. Someone wants to do a susu, one mother's called that there's a family emergency. Nobody helps you deal with these life situations. So they have created, or they are attempting to create, let me put it this way, repositories that will aid teachers. I may not be as eloquent as Swati ma'am when I speak, or as efficient as you, or as knowledgeable as Dr. Sanawat. But at my level, I still have to manage my teacher training. So I think that's come in. It's a given that the quality of output will depend upon input. If I'm being taught by, excuse my language, an idiot, I will definitely respond to that and become one, because that's all I've been exposed to. My 15-year-old actually told me, it's true. This country, how will we move forward if people don't think about wearing masks? I mean, after we're warning people of the third wave, we're seeing what we are. So where is this quality inputting? So it's also parents coming in. They have said the school management committees will involve the parents. So it's not just the teacher training institutes, like Swati mentioned, that will have guidelines. There's a repository being created for help, but more than that, guidance for parents, because it is 50-50 partnership as I see it in the next 5 years. Parents will have to take a bit of a load and they will have to be guided and mentored how to do it. So it goes without saying, quality of teacher and continued training is essential. I know ECA-APER does a lot of workshops every Friday. There are esteemed professionals who come in and dedicate their time, I mean, with some serious experience, including ma'am herself and you and Dr. Sanawat. I think it's important to utilize everything. It's collaborative, Farzana ma'am. It can't just be government doing it. We keep blaming it, and then, you know, we don't even use the public libraries, which is another vision of Nipun. So they're thinking that, okay, if now this school doesn't have the resources, school public libraries will be created in the blocks, in the clusters, and then at the school level as well. I mean, it is an implementation issue eventually, but at least on paper, it's thought through.
Okay. Dr. Sonawat, my question is to you. NCRT released a preschool document, as you remember, 2 years back, and we had a presentation on it. You had given a presentation on it. If you were to compare that document with this manual, what are your thoughts?
That document was much better and very systematic, and it has given a lot of thoughts. And when it comes to the quality early childhood education, so I think so those guidelines can help us to understand the quality in early childhood education. But when it comes to the, maybe it's very difficult, difficulty they have faced, because they have to write on literacy and numeracy. they would have limited to literacy and numeracy, because the context they have given there, they have talked about 2005 and 2019. So all these contexts they have given, which is age-old contexts, and which was not necessary, because those contexts were for ECA, not for literacy and numeracy. So that way, that is one thing. And second thing is, if you see these three goals, all the three goals in the preschool curriculum, also the three goals are given. The same goals, 2019, it is spelled down. So same thing has come again. So that kind of cutting, pasting, maybe it was a pressure. I don't know what was the reason, but same goals are here. What is, I personally feel that the document which these people, they have developed in guidelines, those guidelines are very well spelled, and each and every line of that is thought-provoking. So I like those guidelines much better than this.
Okay, fine. So I would urge all the listeners that NCERT has a preschool curriculum. Please go through that also when you are referring to NIPUN. I think when you will put both together, you will get a very comprehensive idea about the kind of activities that you can do in the classroom. Over to Fatima. Fatima, it's time for you to ask your questions.
Okay, so I'm going to return the favor back to Dr. Sonawat. She led with me. Dr. Sonawat, there was something in the document that spoke about the repository. Shagun is the vision. It talks about institutional, so it has to be top end. Then it talks about behavioral, because now what will you do? Vision is there, but how will you implement? And then it talks about programmatic, which is what you mentioned, checklists, guidelines, step-by-step hand-holding. Do you see there being difficulty in getting all this together? I just want people to understand that it shouldn't get lost, and what is actually the benefit of Shagun.
Actually, if Shagun implementation will start from top, again, it will start from top, and it will help all levels, like state level school, it will have district level, block level, village level. So all levels it will help if Shagun is implemented that way. And second thing is, when we are talking about assessment, standardized assessment. So Shagun is only way of giving the standardized assessment part, which is a national level assessment. So till now, everything was dependent on ESER. That is a Pratham is doing. So the dependency on ESER was, now government has taken in their hand, and they want to have their own assessment. So Shagun will help them to do the assessment also.
Data. Because I think Shagun talks about, they want to now start tracking and mapping children.
So they want to have a robust,
So I thought Shagun was interesting.
It's very interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. Actually, that means if somebody asks me what is good about this, is I will say robust. Government is thinking of robust platform, and it is so robust that the whole country's data of literacy and numeracy will be there. Each and every child's progression will be shown in that platform. So Shagun's role will be much more to bring that standardized. And then if you have some student like maybe Menaka, and what is her status when it comes to the literacy and numeracy, she can go and check her status. So that kind of vision is there. So that is a national level. So we don't have really data. And the data which is ESER is giving, it is always sample data. So at least now we'll have a data for primary, government school, NGOs, as well as private school. All data will be there. So I'm really happy with your question of Shagun, and it will help.
Thank you, Dr. Sonawat. My question, ma'am, is not to you, Dr. Swati, but is to Farzana, ma'am. Because I did see, people on the chat box referring to hands-on learning, give us some more activities. Because you're such a stalwart as far as transdisciplinary learning is concerned, how do you see NIPUN handle this? Because they're talking about literacy and numeracy first time in the same breath. So they are not saying this is separate, this is core. Can you throw some light on it? Foundational literacy and numeracy talking together and using a bit of transdisciplinary examples so that the listeners and the participants can benefit from it.
This is the most interesting bit which I found in NIPUN, that earlier we used to have these subject watertight compartments, numeracy, literacy. Now they're also thinking transdisciplinary, which is actually the way. Like if you don't, in senior school, if I don't know maths, I can't solve physics problems. So there is transdisciplinary learning happening even in our state board schools. But unfortunately, at the primary and pre-primary level, it used to be watertight compartment. NIPUN is the first time that they are saying that we could teach maths, but also be teaching language together with it. And I think that will also lend itself to EVS, because I think those are the three core pillars in the primary curriculum in our rural as well as state schools. So I think that is why my question came about teacher training, because this is a new step. It's a new wind blowing. Are our teachers all ready for it? If they're not ready for it, we will need to handhold them. Your word was right. NIPUN is a hand-holding document. We will have to handhold them to help them to develop this transdisciplinary learning. I hope I've answered. I did give some examples when I was talking.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Farzana ma'am. Swati ma'am, can I be the naughty kid in the class and ask the question?
Sure.
And ma'am, the question is directed to you. Because when you mentioned school readiness, it almost came from a place of pain. One of the things I didn't like about the document was there was some sort of mention about some 3-month plan. How in 3 months do you bridge some gap unless it's over a period of time? Ma'am, could you emphasize, because I think this is a point, this is a pain point. Preschools are not meant to be feeders for high schools. Preschools play a part, but now we're thinking of it as a combined effort. Some bit about the school readiness, because I didn't understand in 3 months, what can you transition unless it's long term?
So if you read the NEP document, it talks about Balvatika. There's a terminology like that which they have used. What they are trying to say with that Balvatika is that it's not that in 3 months to prepare them with some curriculum. It is basically to be treated as a transition period where the children know that they are going to go to primary class now. And if there are any changes that are required in them, which the teacher is not yet seeing, like they would be having longer hours in primary, they would have to sit for a longer period of time. If they are not ready for the literacy and numeracy goals that are part of primary, then those 3 months called the Balvatika are going to be used to transit the children from teachers, parents, and children from a mindset of pre-primary to the mindset of a primary classroom, because they would be in an Anganwadi when they are in the pre-primary, and then they would go to a school, which we usually call a big school, So I think this Balvatika and the 3-month concept is what they have framed. But in this NIPUN, there is a whole chapter on school readiness. And I feel it is the school readiness term that should be banned in this country, because, and that is why I hate the word preschool, though I'm forced to use it, because people don't understand when you say early childhood center or early childhood education. It's preschool. Preschool means what? Look at the word preschool, something that happens before school. So your ultimate goal is school only, no? That is why I hated that term school readiness. I don't think it should be school readiness. You're not readying the child for school. you are readying the child, or as Dr. Sonawat said, the child is biologically ready, then only he'll be interested. No. So why you are talking about readiness? So Bal Vatika is completely different. Their vision for Bal Vatika is to give that chance for Anganwadis to integrate with the primary school, which right now are working in silos. And so are our private preschools and K-12 schools, etc.
Thank
I
you,
hope
ma'am.
that has
Thank you.
answered it. Thank you. It's time to take
As
2
always.
questions now from the audience. We are running out of time, but we can take 2 questions. So I would ask Mansi if she can select the questions and who it has been addressed to.
So, ma'am, there's one question. So it's addressed generally. Anybody can answer. How are we ensuring that teachers will exercise NIPUN guidelines?
So Dr. Sonawat, would you like to take that?
Don't worry about that because I'm sure the one who has asked, at least 25-30% you are implementing. Is a question of rest of the 70%. So 70% you attend our ECA workshops and ECA webinars, and ECA will be giving series of webinars where you will be understanding the whole junk of Nipun. Because when I'm reading, actually, I'm not finding, means I'm looking for something new, something very different. So if you go to any quality school, what is happening, observe that quality school, then 50% of the Nipun is done. Only the part which is tricky in Nipun is the assessment. So for assessment, I think so what we will do is we will have a separate webinar on assessment according to Nipun, because Nipun is talking about 3 ways of observation, then it is talking about rubrics, and then it is talking about the portfolio method. So these 3 methods of assessment in a classroom. Then it is talking about school assessment, and then it is talking about standardized assessment. So these 3 things are very, very important where we can focus, because when we are understanding assessment, then automatically we will understand the curriculum, because curriculum and assessment go hand in hand. So the things which you are not able to understand with assessment, maybe you will be understand, and according to that you will plan the activity. So it should not be difficult, and I'm sure it will be very, very easy for you to understand, because the things which we are doing from so many years, I think so everything is put in the Nipun. So that way, and
I think you are very right. ECA will soon hold a workshop on assessment so that they understand the assessment ideas that have been given in Nipun, because as you rightly said, that is the one thing that teachers will struggle with the most, understanding assessment. Farzana ma'am, the next question that somebody has put here, I will give it to you. They said, how can we work with parents to ensure that the transition happens smoothly from pre-primary to primary?
That's a very great question. This is something which most schools, even when they have the pre-primary and primary, struggle with. If it's a continuum, I can share 2 ideas. What we usually do in our schools is we get our grade 1 teachers at the end of, that's physical school, friends. They sometime in March spend a lot of time with the pre-primary children. They play with them, bond with them. So when the transition happens, it's not new teacher, new face. They at least know the person. That's one way we handhold. So our children, it's a smoother transition. And another thing that we do is we always have this continuum meetings where the senior KG, upper KG is always talking with the grade 1 teachers, so that they are in sync. So they know exactly what the child knows, especially now in COVID times. I would request every school, if you are a high school, full school, to get this going, because there may be a learning loss which we may have to cover up in grade 1. I hope it answers the question.
Fatima, would you also like to give some inputs?
I think, ma'am, when we started off the conversation, you spoke about parental communication. Often these documents go unnoticed. This is a national initiative. NEP is a national policy, and media is highlighting some aspects of it. So as a school, it is very important. I think you beautifully summed up slides that were important and relevant. I think communicate with your parents, build a relationship with them, break it down to say, this is what the future of learning is, this is how we're going to do it. The best way, and the example I can give, is actually letting your parents walk into some of the older grade classes. You can often talk, but people only can listen that much. But when they're experiencing, we used to do this in our schools as well, in the physical world, like ma'am said, Farzana ma'am, we actually laid out all the teacher resources. We walked them through the teacher training. We explained to them how we are going to actually map the child, transition the child. There was faith in the teacher, the institute, simply because you communicated. Often we assume parents will know, but you've been the biggest advocator. They don't come with a degree. Also, they're not the experts, you are. So if you can open your world, share information through these little seminars, do it hands-on, get them to experience grade 1 classes, they will not fear it. I think it's very important. You mentioned it often. The difference between a successful story and one that doesn't do well is often in the fact that we don't share enough and collaborate. Your parents are 50-50 educators. Thank you.
Super. So I think if schools can make a presentation for their parents on what is Nipun and how are they planning to implement Nipun, or how are they already implementing Nipun, I think that would create a lot of awareness in a parent's mind about Nipun. And I think I think we now as schools should work harder to keep parents abreast about educational initiatives. I'm finding that schools go gaga over all the educational initiatives and parents know nothing about it. So it is very, very important for us to keep them updated. It's a sad thing that a document like Nipun or NEP is launched and none of the television media talks about it or has panel discussions on it. I don't even mind if they are abusing each other on the talk show, but do something and talk about the relevance of education. Education is something that has been sidelined in this country for far too long. And I think it's time for media to take it a little more seriously and help us to bring education to the forefront of the policy making, the budget making, and all the decisions of this country. I hope you all have enjoyed the session today. We have run out of time, though we haven't actually, we've wound up on time. 6:15 was what we had kept in mind for ourselves. And we have done a very good job. And Fatima, I think we have stuck to all our goals of who speaks how much and exactly. And I think everybody got their chance to speak. And we also launched 2 book ideas today. So I think on and on, it has been a very, very fruitful session. I hope you all have benefited from this introduction to Nipun. Of course, ECA will be coming out with much more, and Dr. Sonawat has some points to add. So over to you, Dr. Sonawat.
My 2 minutes was there,
Yes.
so I thought I would utilize my 2 minutes.
Please
So
take them.
I personally feel from this webinar that our role I am seeing as an ECA is we should be taking role on monitoring the literacy and numeracy, what is happening around the cities. So around city school, what is the status? And so government is doing a large scale, but as a ECA, we also should start monitoring, because our responsibility, if we understand this particular state or this particular district is low in this area, we can work more aggressively. So when we talk about this document is a mission. So as a missionary, if we work for this document and help district and villages to come up, then only we can say we have done this.
Absolutely. Very rightfully said, ma'am. This has been the dream of ECA, that adopt a government setup and help them while you are working on your curriculum. And thank you for reminding us about it. Mansi, I saw Dr. Sonawat's name in somebody's question. Can you just go to that question?
Yes, ma'am. 1 second.
Yeah. Can you read? It said something about, can Dr. Sonawat help us?
Take the idea of one nation, one education system as parents who are often transferred and suffering. One nation, one education.
Okay, I think that's what we have been asking for. One nation, one education, especially because I think it's the pain of a parent who transfers from one city to the other, and they face this entire pain a lot. And I think that is something that we've always at ECA, we have always voiced this very vociferously, that we want some basic things, policies, safety parameters to be the same in different states. And we're going to be doing much more. We'll keep you updated on that. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Sonawat for putting forth the very, very upfront points about Nipun, to Farzana ma'am for giving those ideas on how to make it interdisciplinary, and to Fatima about helping us understand how parents also need to be involved if the implementation of Nipun will be a success. So thank you all for joining us in this discussion on the National Initiative on Literacy and Numeracy. We are proud that ECA is with you. If you're not a member of ECA or APER, shame, shame. Please become a member. It is important that you must become a member, because if you are not a member, that means you've not contributed to the educational initiative of this country. It's only when we all come together that we can bring about any change. So please become a member. Please visit our website. Please become a member and keep watching our Facebook page. We'll be announcing the workshop on assessment very soon. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to all of you who joined us today. And thank you, Mansi, for all the back-end support, and to Reshma. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.